scene flickered into existence. A tense, sterile tableau bathed in the harsh glow of an operating room. Doctors, masked and grim-faced, moved with desperate urgency, their focus locked on a tiny, fragile form, a premature newborn fighting for every breath. In a separate room, down the quiet hospital corridor, lay Diane, her face etched with exhaustion and worry. A nurse gently wheeled her out, guiding her toward a room where, behind a clear pane, a baby human lay encased in an incubator, a tangle of IV lines and medical equipment clinging to its tiny body. This was Chloe, Diane's baby, and the sight of her, so vulnerable and hooked up to so much machinery, hit Diane like a punch to the gut. The world seemed to shrink to that tiny glass box. Later, a list of potential ailments, a grim menu of possibilities was presented to her. Chloe, they called the baby. 17 years later, the soft hum of a support group filled a room. A gaggle of mothers, their faces a mix of pride and palpable sadness, listened as the facilitator spoke. In just a few weeks, their so-called special condition kids were headed off to college, a bittersweet moment that meant a long stretch of separation. Most of the moms were tearing up, a real emotional mess. But amidst the sniffles and misty eyes, one woman stood out, completely stoic. It was Diane. No tears, no visible pang of separation anxiety. When someone finally asked her about it, Diane just smiled, a calm, unwavering thing. She knew her daughter was tough as steel, nothing to fret over with her decision. And just like that, the scene shifted, dissolving into the quiet morning of the very girl in question. Chloe was just stirring awake, her long, flowing hair fanned out on the pillow. Her legs, however, were still, a stillness that meant her trusty wheelchair was her constant companion. Her day kicked off with a routine as familiar as breathing. First, a thorough slathering of cream all over, then a handful of pills swallowed without a second thought. Next, a quick jab to check her blood sugar. Turns out she was dealing with diabetes, a lifelong companion requiring insulin. And just for good measure, she got arrhythmia and asthma too, making her inhaler an ever-present accessory. But for Chloe, these weren't limitations. Life flowed smoothly, thanks to Diane, her ever-attentive mom, who seemed to anticipate her every need. That's how it had been for 17 years, a perfectly choreographed dance between mother and daughter. Despite the physical shackles, Chloe's mind was anything but. She was sharp as a tack, a total brainiac. Even though her education was all homeschooling, she devoured it, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. She could even build a PC and fix any busted electronics around the house, a real whiz. Her one big dream was to get into the University of Washington. She'd applied, of course, and every single day she'd wait, heart fluttering, for that coveted acceptance letter. But the mailman never delivered the good news. Evenings had their own rhythm. After a full day tending to her garden and looking after Chloe, Diane had a peculiar ritual. Down in the basement, in a dimly lit room, she'd settle in with a glass of wine and watch old videos of Chloe as a toddler. It was her nightly wind down, a private, almost obsessive habit. One morning, while Chloe was deep in her studies, the distinct crunch of tires on the driveway broke the quiet. Her heart did a little flip-flop, thinking it was the postman. She rushed to the front door, hope bubbling. But it wasn't the postman with that life-changing letter. It was just her mom, back from the store. Later, as her mom was distracted on a phone call, Chloe, with a mischievous glint in her eye, snuck over to the shopping bag and snagged a chocolate candy. As she tucked the sweet back in, her fingers brushed against something else. It was a small green medicine in an orange bottle. Her mom's name was right there on the label. A tiny seed of curiosity, or maybe even worry, began to sprout. Was her mom sick? She seemed perfectly healthy to her. That night, when Diane handed Chloe her usual evening meds, Chloe's eyes landed on a familiar green capsule, identical to the one she'd spotted in the shopping bag. She brought up her earlier chocolate grab and her observation of the green capsule, noting its mother's name on the label. Diane, cool as ever, simply dismissed Chloe's concern, explaining that the label was merely a reminder sticker for Diane to administer Chloe's medication, not an indication that the medicine was for Diane herself. She then smoothly reassured Chloe that the medicine was, indeed, for her. Without a flicker of suspicion, Chloe swallowed the pills. The next day, just like usual, Chloe was given her morning medicine, and again she noticed that same green capsule. Her curiosity piqued. She decided to grab the medicine bottle from the shelf in her mother's room and inspect it more closely. She saw that the medicine was called trigoxin. After confirming this, She noticed the container had a label with her name on it. For a moment she paused, a seed of suspicion taking root. But then she noticed the label seemed a little thicker than it should. Upon closer inspection, she discovered it could be peeled off. Underneath, her blood ran cold. The label bore her mother's name. Later that evening, as usual, her mother brought her the medicine again. This time, sensing something was seriously off, Chloe faked taking it. Once her mother was sound asleep, Chloe quietly slipped out of her room and headed straight for the computer. She typed in trigoxin, hoping to find out what it was, but the internet was down that night. Unbeknownst to her, her mother watched her every move from inside her own room. The next day, while her mother was busy in the garden, Chloe saw an opportunity. She called the pharmacy where her mother got the medicine, but when she asked about trigoxin, the operator recognized the number as Diane's. Panicked, Chloe quickly hung up. She went back to check on her mother, who was still gardening. After that, she tried calling 411, an information center, hoping they could connect her to a help center. However, when the operator mentioned a fee for the connection, Chloe hung up again. After checking on her mother one last time, she randomly dialed a number and finally got through. A man answered, and Chloe desperately asked for his help to search for trigoxin online. The man quickly found the information. He told Chloe that trigoxin was a medication used for heart conditions and blood circulation issues. This information wasn't unsettling, knowing she had arrhythmia. When Chloe asked about the appearance of trigoxin, the man described small, red pills, completely different from the green capsules she was taking. Chloe's confusion deepened. That night, in the middle of dinner, Chloe suddenly suggested going to the cinema. Her mother agreed without hesitation. The next day, before they left for the cinema, Chloe secretly retrieved the pills she'd been saving in a piggy bank. Then they headed out. At the cinema, Chloe claimed she needed to use the restroom, but she used that opportunity to sneak across the street to the pharmacy where her mother usually got her medicine. Unfortunately, there was a long line. Afraid her mother would realize she'd been gone too long, she asked the people in line if she could cut in front. Luckily, they agreed. Chloe immediately asked the pharmacist for information about the green capsules. At first, the pharmacist was hesitant to give out information, but when Chloe claimed it was part of a game with her mother, who had told her to find out the name of the medicine, the pharmacist relented. After a quick search, the pharmacist revealed that the medicine was called Ridocaine, a relaxant typically used for dogs. Suddenly, Diane appeared at the pharmacy, calling out Chloe's name. Seeing that her mother had discovered her, Chloe quickly asked the pharmacist what would happen if a human took Ridocaine. The pharmacist explained that it could cause numbness in the legs. Hearing this, Chloe's panic soared, especially since her mother had caught her looking into the medicine. Diane immediately rushed over, quickly waving the other people away from the scene. Once the coast was clear, she swiftly injected Chloe with something that instantly knocked her out. Without a moment's hesitation, Diane scooped her up, carried her back to the house, and laid her down in her room. A deep worry settled over Diane. Chloe had clearly started to suspect something was amiss. After taking a quick shower, she headed to the basement, rummaging around for household neurotoxins on the internet. It was unclear what twisted plans she had in mind for them. Meanwhile, back in her room, Chloe suddenly jolted awake from her drug stupor. When she tried to leave, she found the door locked tight from the outside. She called out for her mother, but silence was her only answer. She tried her hand at picking the lock, and after a tense struggle, she finally managed to get it open. But even then, the door wouldn't budge. It had been jammed from the outside, ensuring she was completely trapped. Not one to give up easily, Chloe filled her mouth with water and grabbed a soldering iron. She then managed to squeeze out of her room's window, carefully crawling across the roof tiles until she reached the glass window of her mother's room. With precision, she soldered the glass, then sprayed it with the cold water from her mouth to create a crack. After a sharp tap, the glass shattered, and she slipped inside. But just as she entered, a crippling asthma attack seized her. Struggling for breath, she crawled back to her own room, desperately reaching for her inhaler. Once her asthma had settled, a fierce determination to escape gripped her. She planned to run away, but another roadblock immediately appeared. Her mother had cut the power to the stair lift, making it impossible for Chloe to use it and get downstairs. Once again, Chloe was forced to rack her brain for a solution. With a surge of defiance, she heaved her wheelchair down the stairs, intending to climb down after it. But the descent was rough, and she ended up tumbling. In that painful moment, despite the fresh wound on her head, a wave of pure joy washed over her. She realized she could move her toes. The sensation was exhilarating, a clear sign that her temporary break from her mother's daily medicine regimen was already having an effect. Once she'd maneuvered herself back into her wheelchair, Chloe wasted no time. There was no hesitation. She burst out of the house, pushing herself as fast as she could, desperate to get as far away as possible. Just when despair might have set in, luck smiled on her. She spotted the postman, Tom, the familiar face who usually delivered her mail, driving his van. With all her might, she rolled into the middle of the road, forcing him to stop. When Tom pulled over and approached her, Chloe quickly, breathlessly spilled her story, pleading with him to take her away. But just as Tom was helping her into the van, Diane's car appeared at the end of the street. She saw them. Stopping abruptly, Diane approached Tom, demanding that he hand Chloe over so she could take her home. Tom, having heard Chloe's frantic tale, refused to comply, even as Diane tried to convince him with a practiced ease. Because Tom stubbornly refused to give Chloe back, Diane finally resorted to calling the police, hoping to threaten him into submission. But there was no signal out there, and with no other option, she seemed to give in. She allowed Tom to take Chloe on the condition that she would follow closely behind them. Tom agreed, quickly helping Chloe into his van, while Diane returned to her car to retrieve something hidden from view. Just as everything was set and they were about to drive off, Diane swiftly injected Tom with a powerful sedative from behind. Moments later, Chloe herself blacked out, only to awaken in Diane's secret room, a hidden chamber tucked away in the basement of the house. There, a thick, viscous liquid sat on a table, its purpose unknown. But more startlingly, she found the long-awaited reply from the University of Washington. A chilling realization dawned on her. Her mother had been intercepting and hiding all her mail, including that crucial university letter. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, Diane was seen moving Tom's lifeless body. The postman was dead. Chloe quickly realized her wheelchair had been tied down, leaving her stranded. Her eyes then caught sight of a green box on a nearby shelf. She crawled toward it, her heart pounding. When she finally managed to open it, its contents sent a shockwave through her. Inside was a photo of her as a small girl, looking perfectly healthy, just like any other kid. Alongside it, she found a death certificate with her own name on it, stating she had died just 2 hours and 11 minutes after being born. And nestled within, a crumpled piece of newspaper reported a baby kidnapping that had occurred on the exact same day she was declared dead. Everything finally clicked into place. The horrific truth slammed into Chloe. She wasn't Diane's biological daughter at all. She was a baby snatched by Diane from the very same hospital on the very same day Diane's own infant had died. Suddenly, Diane entered the room, her eyes falling on the scattered files, realizing her dark secrets had been exposed. Chloe, her voice raw with betrayal, screamed that Diane wasn't her mother. But Diane vehemently denied it, instead claiming she hadn't kidnapped her, but rather had saved her from her real parents. Diane's demeanor abruptly shifted. She became overly kind, suggesting they start fresh, even agreeing to throw away all the medication. As she reached out to Chloe, Chloe noticed a faint trace of blood on her hand. A fresh wave of alarm washed over her, and she instinctively recoiled, refusing to go with her, demanding to leave. That refusal made Diane snap. With a swift movement, she mixed a pain thinner into the thick liquid on the table and drew it into a syringe. Terrified, Chloe scrambled into a small warehouse within the room, locking herself inside. Diane's composure finally shattered, her voice descending into a frantic whisper as she pounded on the warehouse door. Inside, Chloe's eyes landed on a bottle of insecticide on a shelf. A desperate, chilling thought flickered through her mind. To end it all right then and there by drinking the poison. But just as she was about to do the unthinkable, Diane managed to force the door open, finding Chloe already holding the deadly liquid. Cornered and with no other option, Chloe downed the insecticide and collapsed unconscious. Panic seizing Diane, she immediately rushed her to the hospital. Miraculously, Chloe's life was saved, but the poison had left her utterly paralyzed, unable to move a single muscle save for her eyelids. From her hospital bed, she caught a glimpse of Diane through the window, waving at the nurse. A cold dread settled over Chloe as she recognized Diane's malevolent intent. Desperate to warn the nurse, Chloe attempted to communicate through Morse code, asking for a pen and paper. But before she could get her message across, the hospital alarm blared, and the nurse left her side. Moments later, Diane appeared and swiftly took Chloe out of the room, clearly intent on spiriting her away from the hospital. In the elevator, Diane leaned in close, softly assuring Chloe that she was her mother and that Chloe would always need her. As they moved through the hallway, Chloe tried desperately to signal for help from the people around them, but her voice wouldn't cooperate, not a single sound escaping her lips. Meanwhile, back in Chloe's room, the nurse on duty discovered her bed empty. She quickly contacted another nurse, but there was no record of Chloe being transferred. Then her eyes fell upon a message Chloe had managed to scrawl. The simple word, Mom. The nurse instantly realized Chloe was in grave danger. Soon after, a hospital-wide announcement blared, dispatching security guards to search for Chloe and to guard the south gate. Upon hearing this, Diane took her gun. As they reached the top of the escalator, Chloe's eyes landed on a poster for her dream school, the University of Washington, prominently displayed near the exit. The sight ignited a fierce spark of defiance within her. As Diane began to move her down the escalator, Chloe mustered every ounce of strength, jamming her feet against the wheelchair, preventing Diane from pushing her forward. Just then, security guards arrived, ordering Diane to drop her weapon. Unwilling to surrender, Diane remained defiant, and the security finally opened fire. She tumbled backward, falling down the escalator. 7 years later, a scene unfolded within what appeared to be a facility. Chloe, now an adult, was seen walking on her own, though she still relied on a cane and moved with a slight gait. The place was revealed to be a mental hospital, and Diane was a patient there. In Diane's room, Chloe confronted her, recounting how her life had unfolded without her mother's presence. Before she left, Chloe offered her mother something. There were several green pills which she took from her mouth, identical to the ones Diane had once used to paralyze her. With a chilling resolve, Chloe then forced Diane to take them.